So for our lightning spread, we will need the simulation points that we created in the beginning of the course. Let's go find them, and here they are. So SimBTs. Let's grab this node, so Control C, and bring this all the way down. Let's create an object merge and merge this in. Whoops, let's merge this in over here. Okay, and here are our simulation points, and this will be the basis for our lightning spread. So from this node, what I can do, and here we will create the chain, or rather the network chain for the lightning spread. And this will be a simple enough process in the early stage to just generate the lightning itself, so the lines that are going to be used as a basis for the lightning. So from this node I will just drop down a transform node, and from this transform node, if I set the uniform scale to 1, we sort of mush all of these points in the center, and it will ignore all of the animation basically, since this is a uniform scale of 0. So from here what I can do is, if I merge these two nodes, and from here I drop down an add node, because this is a copy of our simulation points, this will have this copy will have the same ID as our points. So from here I can go to polygons, and if I select by group, we can specify an attribute which is going to be ID. So now we draw a line from each point to its corresponding point from this transform node. And if I preview this animation, this will be the basis for the lightning. There is a problem currently if I show all objects, so we can see the geometry, and if I preview a few frames, this is a little bit hard to see for now, but we can remember that we retimed the simulation. So we also have to go to the transform pieces over here, and we basically change the speed of which this lightning will propagate. So all we have to do here is grab this time shift node and the retime node, and I will want to create a copy from this. So I will just right click and go to action, and let's create a reference copy. And now I can disconnect these two nodes that are essentially copies, and I will drag these over here, and I want to retime our simulation points as well. So let's plug these over here, and now the transform will go to this retime. So now the lightning that we generate here will match our pieces animation. Okay, so we just have to be mindful of this time shift and retime node. So let's hide other objects, and let's start working on this lightning. From here I can drop down a resample node to give our lines geometry. Let's make the length 0.01, and let's see how many points we have. Okay, so this should be enough. And if I go to the information here, we can see that we are inheriting all of these attributes from the particle simulation, and let's maybe only keep a few of these attributes. So over here, before my time resample, I want to drop down an attribute rename, and we will use this to determine what attributes we keep. So this attribute rename has a very useful function here that says keep attributes, and by default we are keeping all of them. Let's maybe select just a few attributes that we need. So we will need age and life, and also ID. Alright, and then from this resample I will drop down an attribute VOP, and I will maybe rename this to initial noise. And before we step inside, let's also generate a curve view attribute with this resample. So turn curve view attribute on, and now let's go inside our attribute VOP. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a value to the Y position of the points and scale it with this curve view attribute. So what I mean by this is, let's maybe first import our curve view. Okay, so let's make sure that this is curve view, and I will place this inside a ramp parameter. Let's set the label for this to curve view ramp and make this a spline ramp. And from here I want to generate a vector, so let's type float to vector, and let's plug this into our second val and delete the first wire. And if I simply add this to the P so far, let's drop an add here and let's add our vector and let's plug this into the P. Let's go up a level and reset the ramp. We have an offset in the height of this lightning. So what I can do is edit this ramp and let's maybe make both of these handles be B-spline. And let's make some adjustments to this ramp. So let's bring this up, create some points here, and I want this basically to start from a value of 0 and over to the end as well. I don't want this upwards motion to affect the edges, or rather the ends of our lining as well. So maybe I can just edit this a little bit and make it look a little bit more interesting. Alright, and I want an overall multiplier of this effect, so let's step back inside and let's multiply this vector, or actually before we create the vector I can multiply this here, drop down a multiply and promote the second input, and I will just simply rename this to height amp. So now if I go up and increase this height amp, we can determine exactly at which height we want this lining to be. Let's maybe readjust this spline a little bit and make it look a little bit more natural maybe. So this height will depend with our pieces as well, so maybe let's show all objects, and I think this is pretty good as it looks so far. And we can see here that right in the beginning I really don't want this height effect to be this large, so we can also scale this by using our age attribute. Let's step inside and I will bind import an attribute, and instead of age let's actually use an age, which is the normalized age of the particles. So type here an age, and let's also create a ramp for this as well. And let's rename this to ramp age, and label will be also ramp age. Set this to be a spline ramp, and let's just drop this directly into the multiply. So now if I go back and reset the ramp age, let's maybe hide other objects, and we can see now that this height will slowly fade in over time as the particles age. So when they reach their full life, maybe around this frame of 45, they will have the full effect of this height. So maybe we also want to adjust this ramp to have a faster start in the beginning. Set all of these to B-spline, and let's see how this will look. Okay, so they will start with a low height value now, and if I show all objects, this would make a little bit more sense, and then they scale over time. So maybe we can adjust this ramp a little bit. And let's maybe delay this whole lining a little bit, maybe by 2 frames. And let's drop another time shift after this copied time shift. Let's drop here another time shift and readjust this by, let's say, delay this by 2. So I will subtract 2 here. And so this is just now slightly delayed by 2 frames. And I think this makes a little bit more sense. And maybe it would be better if I just add a little bit more height. Let's maybe try a value of 3. And let's go here and let's get rid of this one in the middle, so we ensure that this has a nice arc to it. I think this looks pretty good.